Thank you. What I'm going to do is just give you a couple of quick highlights of some of the major activities that are underway now, and then a broad overview of the action plan to set the stage for the two panels that we have to come. First, I want to emphasize, as Daniel did, that there's a tremendous amount of funding that's now flowing, thanks to the governor and the voters' passage of Prop 4. Tens of millions of dollars in grants. Solicitations are already released or about to release. Sierra Nevada Conservancy, Regional Fire Force Capacity at DOC, WCB, and CAL FIRE in particular have a wide variety of grants for health, fire prevention, et cetera. Please seek out those agencies to get as up to date as you can. There's also a grants portal that hopefully will help you. But overwhelmingly, we're happy to be able to say that our progress is continuing even at a bigger pace now that we've got this fresh infusion of funding. And secondly, as Secretary Crowfoot said, we're really leaning in on streamlining everywhere we can. We've had a very, very successful streamlined process. Over 400 projects have been reviewed, gone through that system. We are now working both internally and with the legislature on options to make that a more durable process, because we've heard from many of you that getting these projects approved quickly in a matter of a couple of months rather than a couple of years has been a game changer out in the field. So hopefully you'll hear more about that soon as well. Now, on to the plan. Under Forest leadership, we've been spending about the last 6 months working with many of you in the region, many of our agencies, to try to take our effort to the next level. Of course, it's built upon the great progress that we've made in the last 5 years. The first plan was the first time ever we were able to put into one place all the federal, state, local, activities so that people would have a roadmap, could understand how things fit together, provide a platform for agencies and regional entities to align as never before. We made a particular emphasis on science. 5 years ago, there was a lot of questions about, do fuel breaks work? Prescribed fire, how important is it, et cetera, on down the line, thinning. You'll hear from Steve Estoia the latest findings from the science community on what's working to maximize our effectiveness in both Northern California, Southern California, and both in communities and forests. Second, building capacity, particularly through the RFFC program. They've been able to spend well over $100 million helping regional collaboratives up and down the state better plan and prioritize their projects, build a network to be better positioned so that when funding does come, they're able to get projects on the ground. Streamlining, again, we're going to continue to work on that, but it has been a hallmark of our success to date to not only get more money out the door, but to get projects implemented as fast as possible. And then finally, with all this new data and all this new technology, we're seeing advances virtually every month on new technology, new decision support tools that are enabling us to better plan, prioritize, and report on projects. So we're going to continue to build on that, particularly, as Daniel said, Chief Berlant, to shift from a focus on acres treated to being better able to characterize the many, many multiple benefits that these projects are having. So with that, what we've decided to do with the plan is organize it into 3 overlapping buckets. We've got a community wildfire preparedness section that CAL FIRE's leading. You'll hear from the first panel on all the different aspects of community work. Of course, we have landscape work, where we're in particular partnering with Forest Service, BLM, and big, large land managers on trying to align our efforts there. Obviously, that's closely connected to community work, so you see a big overlap there. And then finally, a real emphasis on how we get this done, how we're partnering between state, federal, local agencies, tribes, utilities, Caltrans, et cetera, to be able to accelerate this work. So starting with the community side, again, you're going to hear from the first panel on this. Big emphasis on every aspect of community work, from the structure level, where we know home hardening and defensible space are vital, to county-based strategies where we get communities and neighborhoods aligned, a fuel break system, roadway system, utility corridor systems, And again, as Chief Berlant said, much better data is arriving every day, new models on how to more effectively address preparedness at the local level. Moving to the landscape scale, as Secretary Crowford said, we're really going to be zeroing in on those areas that are the highest priorities, in particular, high hazard zones. We've got a lot of them in the state. The data, the science, and modeling shows if we can laser focus on those high priority areas together with a comprehensive fuels treatment and fire break network, we can really set the stage for a much more rapid expansion of prescribed fire as a maintenance tool looking forward. And then finally, on the organizational side, we're continuing to look at the landscape side for the RFFC program to lead the way, to provide a statewide framework. And then, as Chief Berlant said, on the community side, to really look for a county-based network to try to provide that next wave of projects that's even more aligned than where we've been to date. We've worked hard also with the Forest Service to make sure that alignment matches their work ahead. You're going to hear more from our second panel on that, on how do we geographically align Forest Service work, state parks work, CAL FIRE work, RCD work across the board. We spent a lot of time on trying to figure out how to do that in a way that's effective and efficient and builds upon the great system of collaboratives we have throughout the state. Here's just a small snapshot. Some of you have seen this before that illustrates the transition that's underway. We funded hundreds of projects in the last several years in Southern California, and we track them with our interagency tracker. That's been a very effective process. As you can see from the next slide, in fact, the Public Policy Institute of California used the tracking system, and they went back the last 5 years and they tracked all of those projects to determine, hey, did we really hit priority areas? And the answer was 83% of the acres that have been treated in the last 5 years have hit those highest priority areas. That's particularly remarkable. In particular, because so many of these projects are multiple benefit projects that are also dealing with recreation, watersheds, carbon, what have you. But the fact that they've been able to go multi-benefit while still, from a fire perspective, honing in on the highest priority acres is a really encouraging sign that those projects are making a difference. Having said that, funding 2,000 projects is not going to be the way to move forward. The way to move forward is to start bundling those projects into area plans that could be funded by block grants. So this next slide that you've seen before, CAL FIRE has pioneered this approach in this last year through grants to Southern California, Sierra Nevada, and the North Coast, where they're giving $10 million and more, in this case, to fund six sub-regional grants across 23 sites and 20 partners in one grant. So this is a big shift, probably the biggest shift in the action plan, is a transition from funding one project at a time to big block grants to regional plans and county-based plans that really provide the glue that pulls together all the related projects at the local level. And I want to emphasize, this is more than just a concept. We've got 3 rounds of grants that are about to be issued from CAL FIRE, from the Sierra Nevada Conservancy, and from DOC. Prop 4 recognized the value of this large landscape block grant approach. So we've got, as you can see from this, over $100 million is going to be flowing in this next year towards these larger landscape grants that are going to accelerate our progress like never before. And then again, as we've talked about, taking that broader perspective, you'll see this slide again in one of our next panels, allows us to also evaluate the effect of this project much better than we can by just obviously relying on acres treated. This is just one example where the Southern California team looked at the ignition reduction network, got all the data in, modeled that, and showed the significant reduction in burn probability that we're going to get across the board from putting that area-wide, region-wide network in place. So just one example about how new technology, new metrics are transforming not only how we do projects, how to better plan and prioritize them, but how to also better evaluate their effectiveness so we can inform the next generation of projects. This next slide tries to sort of pull it all together as one comprehensive plan. Again, from a planning perspective, we're going to be working closely with the Forest Service on the landscape side to develop a network of 5-year plans of work across the board that pulls together all the state, federal, local, landscape level projects. CAL FIRE is going to be leading an effort to do the same thing using counties as a basis for community side. With a laser focus, as we've mentioned, on high hazard, particularly dense forest to make sure we maximize the dollars we're spending, to shift from block grants to fund them so we get multiple projects funded at a time, to continue our effort to streamline. So again, those projects happen quicker than they otherwise would, and really to try to go to the next level on partnerships and implementation, whether it's a good neighbor agreement or some of our other partnerships. Every day we're getting better and better at doing work on the ground across boundaries. And so you're going to see an acceleration of that effort. And then again, with reporting a big shift from acres treated, which is an important measure, as Chief Berlant said, but we're going to be supplementing that with the kind of outcome-based measures that everybody's been looking for. So we encourage you, after we get this draft out to date, to get your comments in. We're going to have a web-based system to collect them, but more importantly than that, we're going to be going out on the road. We're going to be meeting with counties, with RCDs, with boards of conservancies. We're trying to use every opportunity we can to go local and regional so that we can hear from you what parts of this plan resonate, where we can strengthen the plan as we move forward. And of course, we're going to have an extensive tribal consultation as well to make sure we get input from the tribes throughout the state. So with that, Secretary Crowfoot, looking forward to hearing from our panelists a little bit more in depth on some of the key aspects of each of these strategies.
Well, thanks so much. That is a great overview. And the thrust of this updated action plan is to really create the conditions for success over the next decade. There's just been this huge surge in activity and coordination and partnerships over the last 5 years. And now we're focused with the science in hand, our arms around the challenge on what we actually need to do in a durable way to reduce wildfire risk, bring health back onto the landscapes, and really create a sustainable pathway forward. So it's really quite exciting. Jackie, I don't know if you have any thoughts before we move on.
Well, I think a couple of things or themes that came out pretty strongly, and maybe we haven't said it quite this way, but this really has been, we've all talked about the improvements, the gains we've made, the things we've learned along the way. And I think that's something we have to really call out. This is a process and an evolution. So we are going to try things, we're going to learn, and we're going to improve, and we're going to adjust. And I think that message kind of was sprinkled throughout each piece of this as we talked about it, of how we are growing and gaining and improving along the way. I think also the call out of just the recognition, again, from the state perspective, from all of our agency perspectives, of the strong tie and recognition of the importance of the tribal perspective and having them at the table and what that brings for all of us and what we gain from all of that. So it's all positive, Wade. It is, even the things that we've had to learn and adjust and shift a little bit, that's positive. And so again, it's such a good story to tell, and so strong of a story to share with others.
I agree.